They say never meet your heroes. They say you'll just end up disappointed. I never bought into that. So here I am with a true hero car. The Civic Type R. 320 horsepower, 0 to 100 kph in 5.2 seconds. Fastest front-wheel drive car around the Nürburgring. It's a bit of a sleeper. Non-car people will not know how special this is. But car guys, they will know. And it comes with a complete set of pedals. Does it live up to expectation? And is it worth your money? Let's find out.
The styling of the previous gen Honda Civic Type R was very polarizing, with some people saying that it looked too busy. Now Honda dialed back some of that styling on this current gen FL5 Honda Civic Type R, and the result is a much more mature looking car.
The styling of the new Type R looks more cohesive, with fewer parts that look like tacked on aftermarket modifications. It's less boy racer and more sport executive. While it seems like most prefer this look over the previous gen, it does fly under the radar a lot.
For a car that's as special as it is, it does look quite a bit understated. Non-car people might look at this and think that it's a nice looking Civic with some nice mods on it, but car people will know instantly what this is. Most of the panels here are different from the regular Civic. This gets an aluminum hood, which is lighter than the steel hood of the regular Civic. It also gets this air vent on the hood, which is real. And you'll find that a lot of the vents here are real, unlike on the previous gen FK8. These fenders are much wider than the fenders of the regular Civic. It is 90 millimeters wider to be precise.
The FL5 is wider from the fenders to the door sills to the actual track. And unlike the FK8, which used tacked on over fenders to give the car more width, the FL5 looks like it was designed to be wide from the start, as a lot of its panels are unique to it. The only body panels that it shares with the regular Civic hatchback are the front doors and the roof. And since we don't get the Civic hatchback here, the Type R is the only Civic hatchback that you can buy in the Philippines.
It is 8 millimeters lower than the regular Civic.
The ground clearance is passable for daily use. You will clear most road humps. It can tackle most mall entrances, but you'll need to know how to approach sharp inclines at an angle, which takes a bit of experience. But then again, if you're in the market for a high-performance car, this is something that you should expect, and the Type R is not as bad as your other options out there.
The FL5 gets 19-inch wheels, which are an inch smaller than the previous generation FK8.
Despite the wheels being smaller, the tires are wider at 265/30s, 20 millimeters wider than the 245/30s of the FK8. Also, it now comes with Michelin Pilot Sport 4s and no longer the Continentals of the FK8.
Okay, so from the back, it's immediately obvious that you're not looking at a regular Civic. You get this huge wing finished in gloss black. Not as aggressive as the FK8 spoiler, but still pretty aggressive nonetheless. These meaty fenders give the car a really wide look. And how can you miss the triple exhaust tips?
The FL5 retains the triple exhaust of the FK8, although it's now been reversed. The big tip is now at the center instead of being on the sides. It's a valved exhaust system, so it can be quiet, but if you put it in R+ mode, the valve opens up and you get a louder rumble. Now it seems to be louder than the FK8, although I can imagine some people saying that it's not loud enough. The good thing about the Type R is that it has plenty of aftermarket options.
And one way of knowing if it's a legit Type R or a regular Civic with a Type R body kit is that this comes with a liftgate.
The car has 410 liters of cargo space, which would make it one of the more practical, high-performance cars for the money. The second row seats fold flat, and I like how the tonneau cover retracts to the side so it's not in the way.
So under the hood of the FL5 is the exact same engine as the previous FK8 Type R, but it's been tuned differently so it produces about 10 more horsepower. Now, like all Type Rs, you only have one transmission option for the FL5, and that is a 6-speed manual.
The peak horsepower may only have increased by 10 horsepower, but it now has more power at the mid-range. The 6-speed transmission has the same gear ratios as before, except for the final drive ratio, which is now lower, which should give it a higher top speed and better fuel economy on the highway. Power is sent to the front wheels via a limited slip differential. The car has plenty of incremental improvements, like the chassis is 15% stiffer, the flywheel is 18% lighter, the exhaust flow rate has been improved by 14%, and the car overall has better cooling. Like the outside of the car, the inside of the FL5 also looks more minimalist than the FK8. Instead of the cascading lines of the FK8, you get simpler horizontal lines on the dashboard. It's more mature looking, which seems to be the theme of the FL5. The dashboard looks almost exactly the same as the regular Civic RS.
Like the regular Civic, you also get this honeycomb grille over here, which hides your air con vents. The difference is that you get this Type R badging over here, which definitely makes it look more special. Now, in terms of materials, this is soft touch right here, this is soft touch, and almost everything else is covered in Alcantara. This armrest over here is covered in Alcantara, this door siding, the center armrest, the seats, the steering wheel, this shifter boot over here. Now, the good thing about Alcantara is that it doesn't get that hot when it's exposed to the sun. The not so good thing about it is that it's not as easy to clean as leather.
Now, the interior may look more mature than the FK8, but it's still not a subtle looking interior. The red carpeting and the sport bucket seats make you know right away that you're not in a regular Civic. The seats have very aggressive bolstering for your back and also for your thighs, which may make getting in and out of the car a bit more tricky, especially if you're plus sized.
This gets a 6-speed manual and the throws are pretty short, as you can see. Feels pretty good. Now, I just have one minor thing to nitpick. I find that the brake pedal and the gas pedal are too far apart, so it's a bit more tricky to heel toe. But that's a personal preference, and I could probably learn to work with this in the long run. Yeah, aside from the red carpeting, the transmission, and all the Alcantara, almost everything else looks the same or looks similar to the regular Civic RS. You get the same 9-inch screen. This has Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, and it also has a reverse camera with active guidelines. You get dual zone climate control, and you get physical knobs and buttons. You get a wireless phone charger, 2 USB ports over here, one 12-volt outlet. Now you get an electronic parking brake over here with auto hold. Now, I'm sure a lot of enthusiasts would prefer to have a manual handbrake, but that's what you get. In terms of storage, the glove box is pretty small. You also have a bit of storage over here. You have 2 cup holders. This also gets a Bose sound system. Now, sitting back here, you can tell right away that this was designed as a driver's car first and foremost, as you don't get a lot of amenities here. You don't get air con vents, you don't get USB ports, you don't get a center armrest. And unlike the regular Civic, this is a 4-seater. Now, in a pinch, you can probably convince someone to sit at the center, as long as they don't mind sitting on a cup holder. Now, in terms of space, legroom is pretty good, like the regular Civic. I have quite a bit of legroom. Headroom is about 2.5 inches. You have a pretty tall center tunnel, but it doesn't matter. No one's going to be sitting here anyway. The Type R has Honda sensing, which includes adaptive cruise control, lane keep assist, blind spot warning, autonomous emergency braking, the likes. Yeah, so surprisingly, even though it's a manual, it has adaptive cruise control. Now it has a minimum speed of around 40 kph, but once you're above 40 kph, it applies the brakes and the gas automatically for you if you have it enabled.
Okay. It also comes with lane keep assist, although like other local Honda models, it only works at highway speeds above 60 kph. The Civic Type R is usable as a daily car. The ride is not as harsh as the FK8, probably because of the downsized wheels and the slightly higher tire wall. It's pretty quiet even on the highway. The clutch is not that heavy. Visibility is good. It has 4 doors, a back seat, and plenty of storage. It's one of the most practical high-performance cars that you can buy for the money. If you're used to driving lowered cars, it's not gonna be much of a problem, but I wouldn't just hand the keys over to anyone who's not used to driving lowered cars, as that lip is very easy to scrape. Fuel economy is pretty decent if you're driving it conservatively. I got about 8.1 kpl in the city and about 18.5 on the highway. One downside though is that the fuel tank is only 47 liters, the same size as the regular Civic, so you'll be making plenty of stops at the gas station.
Okay, let's go.
Driving the Civic Type R on these twisty mountain roads in R+ mode is a pretty raw driving experience.
Sorry about that.
There's a lot of feedback and communication coming from the car. You almost feel like you're having an open dialogue with it. You can feel the road through the steering wheel. You get the tactile sensations of rowing through the gears. You can feel the clutch biting as you lift your left foot. You get that mechanical connection to the car, which is lacking in a lot of modern cars nowadays. In R+ mode, everything feels more hardcore. The steering is heavier, the exhaust is louder, and I believe the suspension also gets stiffer. The shifter feels notchy, the throws are short. Shifting feels quite satisfying. But like I said before, the brake and gas pedals are a bit farther apart than I'm used to, so I would sometimes miss the gas pedal when doing heel toe. I got used to it eventually, but I would still prefer them closer together. Like the previous Type R, this also has an auto blip feature, which thankfully you can turn off for those times that you want to sharpen your rev matching skills. The FL5 has 300 plus horsepower, and it puts all those horses to the ground really well. There's very minimal torque steer and very minimal wheel spin. Traction is very good. It feels like it's on rails. It feels really flat in the corners. Now in terms of power, it actually feels like a normal car if you shift under 2000 RPM, as there doesn't seem to be a lot of torque at the low end. But as you climb from 3000 to 4000 to 5000, it's just a crescendo of sound and violence that I can only describe as addictive. Now if you ask me if the power difference between the FK8 and the FL5 is noticeable, I honestly can't tell. And besides, the last time I drove the FK8 was 2 years ago, so I can't really do a direct comparison. When you're driving it aggressively, the FL5 is a little bit better than the FK8 in a lot of ways. It has slightly more power, slightly better suspension tuning, slightly better chassis rigidity, slightly better exhaust note. They say if it ain't broke, don't fix it. The previous gen FK8 did a lot of things right. It was the best front-wheel drive car for their money. The only thing that Honda had to do was make it a little bit better. And that's exactly what they did with the FL5. It's a little bit better than the FK8 in a lot of different ways, which all add up to a hero car that every Honda fanboy can be proud of.